Hello everyone, welcome back to our lecture. We are continuing with the first week, and in the last class we discussed about the scope of public policy, and we have also started with the significance of public policy. And in the significance we are trying to understand two basic questions. That the first one is, why do we need public policy, and the second one is, why is government intervention needed. So in this context we are describing two aspects. The first one is understanding individual behavior for public policy, and also understanding the group behavior for public policy. For the first one, that is understanding individual behavior, we have taken into account that there are some limitations. The limitations are in form of rational behavior or rational being. So we are continuing with this only. While continuing this particular understanding the rational being, we discussed about that some cases that under some examples like discriminations, that is discriminations against girls, and the second example that we discussed about the missing women from the workforce. So in both the cases we discussed about what is the need of public policy or how government intervention is required. So in continuation to this, in this lecture we will be discussing some other factors that are impacting individual decisions, and as a result the public policies are required. So after this rational being, that is we are discussing about rational being, let's discuss some other factors like unintended consequences. So when we are finding the case of unintended consequences, then the public policy is much more pronounced, much more required. So what exactly is these unintended consequences? So these unintended consequences in economics is also known as perverse incentives. So what is that? So this perverse incentive is that incentive which are caused by the rational individuals, and as a result they behave in a certain way that are not consistent with the introduction of a particular policy, or may even cause harm consequently. So in order to understand these unintended consequences or perverse incentives, so we may give an example, then it would be in a better way to understand. So for example, the case of there is a policy called MNRGA, that is Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. So because of this act, there is a policy that those who are interested to work, they may be provided 100 days of work in rural areas. So that is the reason after implementation of MNRGA, or we can think about that what are the consequences of this MNRGA, right? Whether the participation from female are increasing because of the MNRGA, or the second one that we can think about, the case of subsidized food grain systems, because in order to ensure food security in the rural areas, let's say for BPL households. So if you see this subsidized food grain as a policy, then while framing this particular policy, that the BPL households would be provided certain amounts of grains, right? There are a specification that how to provide and what amount to be provided to the BPL households. So once they receive this particular amount of grains through this particular policy, so as a result what happens, the labor force participation also gets decreased. So in this case I just want to highlight that subsidization of food grains to the BPL households was created because of certain goals. What is the goal? Goal is that these households must be ensured with food security. So in order to fulfill this food security goal objectives, subsidized food grain facilities has been implemented. Okay. So as a result, what should be the expected outcome? The expected outcome is that these BPL households now there will be in a better conditions in terms of food security. So they would be availing the quality and quantity of adequate food, right? So this is the intended one, that is this is the expected result from this particular policy. But sometimes in addition to this expected results, some spillover effects or unintended effects or unnoticed effects are also created. So, that is known as the unintended consequences, okay, or perverse incentives. Okay. So, when I told you that because of this policy, that is subsidized food grain policy, that how this is not only fulfilling the intended consequences in terms of providing food security to these BPL households, but it is also creating unintended consequences. So, what are the unintended consequences? The first one is the labor force participation in rural areas has decreased. But this particular consequences is not expected while designing and implementing this particular policy. So, this is known as the unintended consequences. Okay. So, again in this case that we need to minimize this unintended consequences because it has some other several effects as well. So, so that is the reason we need to minimize this unintended consequences. So, as a result, if you are thinking to minimize this unintended consequences of a particular policy, we can think about that how can public policy interfere, because this is all about the individual behavior, that when there is a policy, the new policy is provision of food, subsidized food to households. So, as a result, it is creating another situation which is harming the particular situation. So, that means we can say that since the individuals, this BPL households, they are behaving rationally. So, that is the reason in the presence of this new provision of subsidized food grains. So, they are creating a condition through their decisions, that is not to participate in the labor force in the rural areas. So, this situation is again creating a not good condition, rather worse conditions in, if you see the earlier conditions of not getting adequate food. So, from we launched a particular policy in order to avoid a particular matter of concern, but after launching that, it is creating another consequences which is equally harm, or this is what you can say, another harmful consequences. Okay. So, that is known as the unintended consequences, and it is happening because of the way the rational individuals are taking actions. And that is again, this is the reason that why at all we need to think about the public policies as well. So, after understanding that how these some of these factors that may impact, and that is the reason we need to get public policy, or we need to we are feeling that the public policies should be there. So, another case in this context could be the moral hazard. So, what is this moral hazard? That how moral hazard again is creating a condition for the public policies. So, let us understand this moral hazard first. This moral hazard occurs when individuals or firms that are protected against some kind of loss, they act with less caution and in comparison to if there is no protection. So, as a result, we can find a bad outcome, right, and that is known as the moral hazard. So, we can take an example. Suppose say that a person has purchased a new car, right, and because this is a new car, then in the first day the insurance could not be purchased. Okay. So, all the necessary documents for claiming insurance could not be processed. So, as a result, on that day or even after that, till the person gets the insurance processed, then during those time the person would be taking too much care that to avoid any kind of accidents. So, the person would be handling the car with utmost priority and utmost care. But after getting the insurance, the same person becomes irresponsible or less responsible or less careful in dealing with this particular car. So, that means the behavior gets changed in certain situations, right. Once the person understands that, so there would be the interest is protected, right, or in case of any kind of accidents, the protection is there through insurance. So, that is the reason once he realized it, once there are documents to claim it, the behavior changes. So, this is a situation which is known as the moral hazards in the presence of protections. So, this moral hazard occurs when individuals or firms even, so those who are protected against some kind of loss, they act with less caution than they would have otherwise, and hence in this process the bad outcome is produced. So, that is being less careful. Okay. And don't you think that in this case, suppose say there is an insurance company, right? So, in the first week or first day or even second day, till the insurance is processed, right, the person is behaving in a very careful way, but after that the person is really driving recklessly or handling the car in a very reckless way. So, in that case, there are chances that the insurance company would be getting a loss, because the probability of reckless handling would be more, because in case of any accident or any kind of theft or any kind of insecurity happens to that particular car, the person knows that he would be getting a benefit from the, he would be claiming the insurance from the company. So, in this case, so there is a case, there is an hazard to the morality of this particular consumer, and similar behavior can also be found on the part of the firm as well. So, in this case, since this is related to the individual behavior or individual or the firm, so that is the reason in order to deal with this situation, the public policy is again required. So, after understanding all these aspects, then we observe that, so for good public policy making, we must recognize why people and firms behave the way they do behave. So, what is the reason? So, once unless we understand and recognize these factors, that why do individuals and firms behave in a certain way, then it is very difficult to formulate a good policy. So, the first ingredient of a good policy is that it must recognize the individual behavior as well as the group behavior. So, after understanding the individual behavior, we found that it is because of the rationality, the limitations is in form of this assumption of a rational human being or rational being, which is causing some or other problems, and when there would be a certain situation which is causing problems on issues, then there would be either the policy demand or there would be intervention by the government in order to tackle those situations. In the same line also, we need to understand the group behavior, and here the main problem is collective action, that how collective action is creating conditions for public policy or intervention by the government. Okay. So, just to understand what is this collective action, we must understand certain concepts to understand this one. So, collective action is not the individual action, rather for achieving a particular target or goal, the action is required by everyone or every member in the society. So, that is what is collective action. But if the objective is achieved or goal is achieved, even though a particular member is not doing, but he will be receiving the equal benefit in as the other members are getting. So, then again here we are finding that this is a problem, that let us say that in a particular society, so there are 12 members. Okay. These members, they are targeting to achieve a particular goal, X goal, and if X goal is achieved, the benefits are equally shared among all these 12 members. But however, out of these 12 members, a particular member, let us say this is the first member, right, takes a decision, because everyone is behaving in a rational way, right, and in this way it is the and action for the collective actions. So, the first one, since he is guided by the rationality, so he thinks that even though I would not be putting any effort or investing anything, still equal amount of benefit would be provided to me through these objectives. So, that is the reason the person may not, many person as a result, if everyone would be thinking in this way, then it is very likely that the objective would not be achieved, right. So, this when we are saying that objective may not be realized, the reason is because of the collective actions, and the person, this person is trying to free ride, that without any contribution he is thinking that he will be getting the equal share of benefit if the goal is achieved. Okay. So, in this context, I will be highlighting some of the points that how individuals take actions while behaving in groups or collective in terms of collective actions. The first one is the externalities. So, what is this externality? That externality is a case, right? So, which is produced, but this is produced not because of your act. So, that means that externalities is created. Let us say we are taking an example of a particular farm, let us say. So, this is the farm. So, the farm is using some inputs and producing outputs, right. So, when we say that the farm is using inputs and producing outputs, so in this output, in this production process, the farm is getting some good output, that is targeted outputs, and also the byproducts of the output which is not a good, rather a bad, right. So, for example, the farm is producing good outputs and that can be easily sold in the market, and the farm would be getting revenues and profits from this production process. But simultaneously it is producing the bad, that is, let us say it is air pollution, right, from this production exercise. And when this air pollution is created, the farm is not taking this air pollution in its production basket, rather this pollution is affecting the others. Okay. So, what is the scenario? Scenario for externalities, that externality is created when the act is because of the externalities is created because of the third party effect, right. So, when two persons are interacting, let us say the first person is doing a particular action, and the outcomes of this particular action is not only realized for the first person, but also to the second person, third person and fourth person, and likewise. So, that is the reason this particular consequences is known as third party effect, because the third party is not creating this particular situation, but however the result of this, the actions of the first party is being impacting the second and third parties as well. Okay. So, in this case, in our example of your bad, let us say it is your pollution, because of the air pollution others are getting affected. Okay. And this particular farm is not taking into account that how others are being affected negatively because of these, and he is only interested to increase the output, right, good output in terms of products, right, so that it can increase its production on the market and also increase the profit. But simultaneously it is also producing this bad output, and the pollution is getting more and more, and others are getting affected. Okay. So, in this case, because of the behavior of this farm in this particular situation, so don't you think that the government intervention is needed? Because the third party, the XYZ persons are not creating these conditions, that is in terms of air pollution, but they have to consume, or they are being affected by the air pollution which is created by another person, and another person is not even internalizing it. It is not doing anything that how to minimize this air pollution, or how to provide some compensation to the others who are getting disbenefited or getting negatively affected by this particular process. Okay. So, here we are needing the some or other kinds of public policies. To understand these externalities, we need to also understand the property right, because this is a theorem that is propounded by Ronald Coase, and he also received Nobel Prize for this, that under some conditions this externalities can be internalized, right. If there can be some certain situations, then this particular problem can be avoided. So, what is that situation? The situation is property right. So, if there is well defined property right with very low transaction cost or zero transaction cost, then this particular problem will be resolved. Okay. This is what, for this understanding, he contributed significantly to the case of collective actions and the group behavior. And the first case is how to deal with the externalities. The second form of the group behavior is the strategic interactions. So, what is strategic interaction? That means if X is taking some action, that how Y can also take action, or how Y should take the actions, taking into account X, how X is taking actions. So, and sometimes if the Y's action is not influenced by X actions, right, then again we are finding the cases that how to deal this particular problem. So, in order to understand this strategic actions, we can take the example of the established game theory, that is the prisoner's dilemma game. So, what is this prisoner's dilemma game? That this is a particular model, right. So, this game, prisoner's dilemma game, is a model that shows how rational agents, two rational agents, each trying to maximize his own utility, because maximization of utility is one of the very core thing, because the person is behaving rationally. So, in this case also we are thinking about a model that shows how two rational agents, they are trying to maximize their utilities, but they are unable to make a binding agreement with other, and they behave in a way that makes both of them in a very worse situation, right. So, since we are discussing about prisoner's dilemma game here, so the situation that I am just explaining, that two members of a criminal gang are arrested and they are sent to prison, right. So, the prosecutors lacked sufficient evidence to convict them on the charge, and they hope to get them sentenced a year, 1 year in prison, or a lesser charge, okay. And simultaneously the prosecutors offer each prisoner a bargain. So, what is that bargain? Each prisoner was given the opportunity either to betray the other, okay, or to cooperate with the other by remaining silent, okay. So, that means we are now having a matrix, a payoff matrix, right. So, you can think about two prisoners A and B, okay. A and B, okay. So, this is a payoff matrix. So, B is here, B's payoffs are there, and A is here, okay. So, the first strategy would be that B can be silent, okay, say, since this is B's, okay. And the second strategy could be betray. So, likewise, A also can follow a strategy that A can remain silent, A can remain silent, and A can also betray, okay. So, if both are remaining silent, then their sentence would be lesser, that is by 1 year each. So, the first one would be facing a sentence of 1 year in jail, and second one would be facing 1 year sentence in jail if both cooperate and become silent, right. And if A becomes silent, A tries to cooperate, but B betrays. That means B produces enough evidence that A has committed the crime. Then the outcomes would be that B would be set free, right? So he would be getting 0 sentence, but A would be getting the highest sentence by 3 years. Okay. Now see that another strategy, that here A betrays but B is remaining silent. If A is betraying and B is remaining silent, so A would be getting 0 sentence, 0 year sentence, and B would be getting the maximum sentence 3 years. Okay. And the last strategy is that if A is betraying and B is betraying, then the outcome would be that both the prisoners would be getting 2 years sentence in jail. Okay. So now see, so this is interesting that if betraying a partner, we can find that if A betrays and B betrays, then we are getting the outcome -2 -2. That means both would be getting 2 year sentence in jail. if they are cooperating, they are remaining silent and they are not producing documents and evidence against each other, then they would be getting a lesser charge, lesser sentence, -1, that means 1 year in jail. Okay, 1 year each in jail. Okay, but if A is betraying, then he is getting the maximum benefit, that is, he is getting 0 year sentence, and the other is getting the maximum disbenefit or maximum sentence, that is 3 years. And the similar is the case here, that if B is betraying, he is getting a 0 year sentence, and the other A is getting maximum number of sentence, that is 3 years. Okay, so from this we can find that betraying a partner offers a greater reward, right? Betraying, right? If A is betraying, then the person A is getting a greater reward, 0 year. So this is the greater reward. Okay, so similar is the case that if B is betraying, then he is also getting a greater reward, that is 0 year, and other is getting the maximum disbenefit or maximum sentence by 3 years. Okay, so betraying a partner offers a greater reward than cooperating with them, right? So if they are cooperating, then they would be they would be getting 1 year each. Okay, so he is also getting 1 year sentence, he is also getting 1 year sentence, but if he betrays, then he can get no sentence, and if he betrays, then he can get no sentence. So betraying a person offers a greater reward than cooperating with them. Okay, so since both are rational human beings, right? So purely rational self-interested prisoners A and B would betray the other, anticipating that they want to maximize their utility. Okay, so the only possible outcome in this case for two purely rational prisoners is betray and betray. So this is the dominant strategy, that is betray and betray. Okay, so as a result, what is happening? The payoff suggests that the mutual cooperation, that is -1 here, is actually superior to the mutual defection, that is -2. But since both the prisoners are behaving rationally, right? So this is not rational outcome for the self-interested prisoners. As a result, they will be getting the outcome, that is -2, since they both want to get maximum benefit, that is 0 years in prison. Okay, so what is the understanding here? The understanding here is that in certain situations, in case of collective actions, right, the government intervention is necessary, or there needs an intervention by the government. Okay, so this is clearly the case that in case of this collective actions, right, in a group, the persons involved, they do not take, since they are guided by the rationality, they do not take the best decisions, right? Here the best decision could be -1, but they have taken this decision -2. So that is the reason there needs an intervention here, right, by the government, right? And this is not the single case. This collective action problem, right, is found in many other cases as well, right? We can find the Tragedy of the Commons by Garrett Hardin, and we can also find the free riders problem that we are discussing here in collective actions problem. Okay, so there are many other real life problems that we are facing the case of the collective action problem, and as a result, the government intervention or there is needed, and there needs a public policy. Okay, now we can think about when is government intervention needed, because all these examples that we discussed, they create some certain situations where government interventions is a requirement or public policies are must. So first thing that we can find is government intervention is needed in certain situation when the first situation is the case of market failure. So market failure is a situation in which the market transaction do not lead to the social efficient allocation of resources, and this market failure happens because of certain conditions. So the first condition is that when there is ill-defined property right, when there is asymmetry of information, or when the public goods are to be provided by private persons. So in all these situations, we will be finding this not inefficient allocation of resources, and that is the situation that causes the market failure. So when market fails and we are not able to find the socially efficient allocation of resources, then of course government intervention is a must. And for that the government would be interfering in terms of, let us say, providing social safety nets. In terms, let us say, we can think about social safety nets like compensations, maternity benefits, or you can think about sickness benefit, unemployment benefit. So, all these are creating certain conditions for the deserved households or deserved sections of the society. Okay, so the government can intervene in terms of providing the social safety net. So our understanding is that what exactly is the government doing? So government is doing so many activities, and if you see these activities, there lies the significance of public policy that government is intervening or doing in terms of public policies. So we can take into account, as I told you, in case of our country or many of the countries, we can find that since many countries are welfare states, they are providing most of the activities in several aspects. So, for example, the government is providing education facilities, welfare activities, the health related and hospitals, highways, police, sanitation, prisons, preservation and conservation of natural resources, and so many and so forth. So, these are by the government. Which government? The state and local governments. In the similar way, you can think about what is the role of the union government, or how what is the significance of public policy in terms of the union public policy. So, you can think about the facilities like defense facilities, and we have, if you check the ministries, union ministries and departments, so then it will be clear that what kind of role the government is doing, and there you can understand the significance of public policy. So, in order to understand in detail that what is the significance of public policy, I believe that we can refer to the activities that is required by the union government, state government, okay, and these activities are listed in terms of union list, the state list and concurrent list. So, what are these? So, it provides that what are the items and activities that is to be provided by the central government, and what are the activities that needs to be provided and done by the state governments, and what are the activities that need to be done both in coordination and cooperation with the union government and the state government. So, we have these three lists as per the Constitution of India, that union list and state list and concurrent list. So, I have provided the reference as well. You can check that how many items are listed in under the union list and state list and concurrent list, and and all these are providing appropriate examples that what is the significance of public policy, and you can follow the references from J. Anderson, Thomas R. Dye as well as Will and Charles, right. So, you can refer to chapter 3 for this. So, it is then rest of the things we can take in our assignment sections as well. Thank you very much.